Oh, sports it is, huh? The Pete Sousa Show, 21st floor of the Alico building. We're live in Central Texas, like the Thanks Slovakics. We're getting ready to do a live show, a live slow at Slovakics, a live show out at Slovakics. I can't wait to hook up with Ray and everybody out there. Also, Sakura Family Ford, we're coming to you guys. All good stuff happening, man. We're presented by D1 and Daniel Stark, too. Or are they presenting? I don't think so. They're just part of the whole team here. Either way, I'm here, and I couldn't be any happier. I do think, though, I might need, I'd love to get some maybe a little more hardcore music for the start of the show, outside of Mike, like playing a banjo or whatever that is. You know that's Mike Hamilton performing. Did you know that?
Wait, you're being serious?
Yeah. I mean, he just says sports. Yeah.
I thought they said that it was all AI generated.
No, well,
hate to reveal the secret.
No, the music is, but the voice is Mike's.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
That is wonderful.
Yeah, so he did a pretty good job.
Where is Mike today? He
went to the dentist, and he's working from home.
Awesome.
He had a big day yesterday.
Hey, Mike.
He had a huge day yesterday, to the point where I did like a buddy check on him later on in the day. Not to disparage the real buddy check, but Mike's a buddy, and I wanted to check on him. Today, I'm coming to you fresh off a quick speaking engagement. I had the opportunity to go over to Baylor and talk to a class there about journalism, about podcasting particularly. I wasn't ready, though. I had a surprise. So I walk into the building there, the Castle Law building on the campus of Baylor, and I'm ready to go. Claire Sanama, she's the one who's the professor of the class. She's got a book coming out. Killer Story is the book. She has produced shows, 48 Hours, 2020, Big Time True Crime. You got to check her out. Obviously, Baylor grad. She's got a class there. She's actually been on The Payoff with Pete. So you can check her out there. Anyways, it was her class. I walk in. Who do I see? Right there, front row. You think it was VJ Edgecombe? It wasn't. It was Aaliyah Binford, and that made me more nervous. Now, who is Aaliyah Binford? Well, I'll tell you who she is. She's only one of the best softball players in the country, and I had a chance to call some of her games last year. I mean, she is literally – I have called her Baylor's version of Beyonce because the way that she handles herself in the circle and the way that she handles herself at the plate, she's just got that star quality. When she's out there, she's owning it. A lot of fun to watch her play. Get a chance to do it this season. I highly recommend it. So Aaliyah Binford was there, which made me nervous right away. But then I got into the whole chat, and it was a lot of fun. And it's really cool to be able to talk to these classes because it's basically like you're talking to yourself because you're talking to yourself as a young kid, I think a lot of times, and some of the things that come out of my mouth. I truly believe in instances like that, like somebody else is speaking. When I'm speaking to a group, like somebody else, something else is kind of speaking through me because I'm a little more, I don't know, charismatic, I think. And the message kind of shines a little brighter. So that was cool. Here today doing the Baylor basketball game tonight on the Baylor Sports Radio Network. Baylor and Sam Houston. Scott Drew says, hey, the train is back on the tracks, baby. Said it yesterday in his media availability. One thing he mentioned that I think is kind of an interesting wrinkle into where Baylor is this season from a program standpoint. You know, last year they played games. They started playing games over at the what the heck is that place called? Farrell Center. The Farrell Center. They started at the Farrell Center, and then they moved over to the Foster Pavilion. Cam was like, "Whoa!" He like snapped at me. Wow. Foster Pavilion. Foster. It's like, wow. Cam, you did this. You go, Foster. You took your little AirPod out. Thanks, Cam. They played the second half of their season after January 1. They played at Foster, but they started off at Farrell. Why is that important? Well, it's interesting because now, like, the offices are over there. Like, so Scott Drew doesn't have to go anywhere on a game day. Like so they do shoot around there, they stay there, then they don't have to go anywhere. It was sort of like a transient deal last year. Even if it's right across the street, the back and forth can be a huge pain in the ass, especially forget about the coaches, but the support staff and even the players. It's like, oh, I left this over there, I don't have it over here. So everything's in one place. A lot of guys are really excited tonight. Think about it. You got a guy like VJ Edgecombe who's never played a college basketball game at home. Jeremy Roach is pumped. I watched that Arkansas game yesterday again, and Cam was right. Cam Stewart, who we'll have on here next segment, from Locked On Baylor. By the way, when I say Cam Stewart from Locked On Baylor, it does a lot for the views and stuff, Cam. So we're going to keep you there. Cam Stewart, Locked On Baylor. And the very aggressive. Jeremy Roach is very aggressive. And I believe, and we're having King McClure segment 3. We'll talk to him a little bit about this, about sharing the basketball. He is so good one-on-one. I think that limits his ability to get everybody else involved. It's so fun to watch him take somebody off the dribble and just slide to the basket. Looking forward to seeing some of that tonight and just seeing how this team grows. They're playing Sam Houston, who Scott Drew referred to as Sam over and over again, which I thought was kind of cool. They won their conference last year, and it's honestly an opponent that is welcomed, I would think, for Baylor after you play 2 ranked opponents. I don't know that any team has played a more difficult schedule to start the season, so it's nice for them to have an opportunity maybe to play a little man-to-man, to play zone, to kind of find their footing against a team like Sam Houston. And it's funny because I don't think Sam Houston's going to catch a break. Baylor finally has a chance to breathe and kind of do their thing, and I think they'll be doing it tonight. Some bad news on the football front, not terrible, but you felt it coming. Gerry Faust passed away. I don't say you felt it coming, but he's 89 years old. So Gerry Faust passed away at 89. We'll talk about him in a second because there's really interesting wrinkles to his whole career. And then John Robinson, who literally is like a football legend, passes away yesterday. And Gerry Faust, I know it was announced earlier this morning that he died. The Gerry Faust thing is so freaking interesting. If you take yourself back, Dan Devine coached at Notre Dame, and his last year they were 9-2, and they went to a Sugar Bowl. The years preceding, they were either in the Cotton Bowl or the Sugar Bowl, and they were good, always vying for a national championship in that conversation. Well, all this is playing out. Gerry Faust, who had always wanted to play at Notre Dame, right? Grew up in Ohio, and he told everybody who would listen that he was going to play for the Fighting Irish. And he actually had a visit to Notre Dame back when he was, now we're talking like the 50s. And he went to Notre Dame on a visit, and he saw that, he wasn't going to be able to start there a quarterback, which is what he played. And he gets on campus, and I think they actually had him like throw and work out back then on their recruiting trips. And he said he knew he wasn't any good watching the other quarterbacks throw. Notre Dame offered him a partial scholarship, did not go to Notre Dame. He went to Dayton, played quarterback there, got a full scholarship. He said he didn't want to burden his parents with obviously the price of tuition. So he goes, and after he gets done school, he builds from the ground up. I mean, literally builds a high school football dynasty, like where he has to get like equipment on loan. And let me see, I want to get the exact high school right here. Let's see where he was. Ohio. I know it wasn't at Massillon. It was Archbishop Muller High School, all boys Catholic school in the Cincinnati suburbs. So he starts this program from scratch. He goes on to win 172 games with 17 losses, right? So that's 1962 to 1980. He's out of college. He builds this empire. And that wasn't just like, we're not talking about like a 7-man football team who's like kicking ass and taking names. This is one of the best football programs and one of the best football states in the world, obviously the country, and he's dominating. And imagine it's just like you're tearing through 6A, and everyone is coming to his high school to recruit. Joe Paterno, John Robinson, Anybody you could think of, Lou Holtz. And so he's getting a feel for how these big time coaches are. Towards the end of Dan Devine's run, he writes a letter in 1976 to Edmund P. Joyce. That was Notre Dame's executive vice president. He writes a letter and is like, hey, I really want to coach Notre Dame someday. Remember now, this is a high school coach. I really, really want to coach Notre Dame. And the guy, Edmund Joyce, actually gets another letter. And this one is from Paul Brown, the owner of the Cleveland Browns. He's expressing, he's basically saying, hey, Gerry Faust is a great guy. Like, I would hire him. And then Faust's lawyer sent Father Joyce, this is a priest, Father Joyce at Notre Dame, all kinds of newspaper clippings about Muller High's accomplishments. That's where Gerry Faust was. 3 years later, Joyce calls Faust and is like, hey, can I meet you? They meet at a Cincinnati hotel. It's the middle of May. Joyce said, hey, Dan Devine's thinking about stepping down. Like, we might hire you. Now, imagine this, okay? That would be like if Texas went to Joey McGuire like 6 years ago, and they were like, which really isn't a crazy leap because Joey McGuire could coach Texas next year. I mean, literally, like if crazy things happen, right, and Texas Tech were to go to the playoff and get to maybe the Final Four, and let's say Steve Sark, like something crazy happens. Joey McGuire is at that level, but 6 years ago he was coaching at Cedar Hill, and he was known as an amazing high school coach and a great recruiter, but no real blueprint there for how he would do at the college level. He has done fairly well so far. We'll find out. Gerry Faust did not do well. Now, I mentioned he took over a Notre Dame program that was constantly, first of all, I want you to take yourself back. We're going to hop in the time machine now. This is when college football was not everywhere, right? Like you would see college football games. They were this is before me, but they would be featured on like ABC. Actually, I was born, but I don't remember. They were featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, no ESPN really. And Notre Dame was always on. Always on. They had the football contract, ultimately with NBC. And Gerry Faust now is one of the biggest football personalities in the country by taking this Notre Dame job. So he went from a high school coach who had literally built a high school program from the ground up to being the coach of the biggest college coaching job you can have. What a leap of faith by the way, two priests. You can't knock priests. I grew up a Catholic guy, and the one priest was actually at Notre Dame forever, and he did an amazing job. The guy who ultimately ended up hiring him, not Father Joyce, this other guy. But Gerry Faust gets to Notre Dame, and it was not a good deal. His first year, they actually were number one in the AP poll. They were like 4-0, beat LSU in his opener. They were ranked number one in the country, like I mentioned. That was as good as he would do. They would finish that year, I think 5-6. They went 6-4 in 82, and then in 83 and 84 they went 7-5. And in his last year they were awful. And the bummer was he announced his retirement. They were 5-5 in his last year. He announced his retirement, and then his last game, if you've ever seen the documentary The U, was a 58-7 drubbing at the hands of Jimmy Johnson and the Miami Hurricanes. So that was a rough one for Gerry Faust. In his last game, I remember reading about this. Tim Brown dropped a pass over the middle that he should have caught. And if he caught it, this is the game before Notre Dame, they would have won the game potentially. And in the locker room, Gerry Faust said Tim Brown was just inconsolable. And he said, I got to stop. I got to stop doing this, because if these guys had a better coach, Tim Brown wouldn't be in a position where he's got to make a catch to win the game. These guys should have been in cruise control. And so he stepped down, I'm sure, at the behest of some of those priests over there. He ended up coaching at Akron for 9 years, where he didn't fare very well there either. 43-53 was his record. And then he worked as a fundraiser at the school and then retired in 2001. Over the course of the past, I guess, since 25 years, he had been like a mainstay at Notre Dame football games. Apparently, Gerry Faust was like one of the greatest all-time people like you'll ever meet, and just a lovely guy by all accounts. You want to talk about accountability? Like he owned everything that went wrong within that program, and unfortunately, he just wasn't the right guy for the job, and maybe he didn't have the bones to be coaching at such a big time level at such an early point in his career. But pretty interesting stuff there. If that were to happen today, I think people will be. I mean, imagine Alabama hiring a high school coach, in Birmingham. That was one of the. I don't think it would ever happen, but it certainly could. At the time, that was something that had been totally unheard of. So Gerry Faust, rest in peace. And John Robinson was a football coach who had great success. He is on. Here's what you need to know about John Robinson. He is on the very, very short list, and he is near the top of it, of coaches who had success both in the NFL and in the NCAA. You don't see that often. I mean, Nick Saban, obviously a more prominent figure in the college football ranks than John Robinson, but Nick Saban couldn't win in the NFL. John Robinson could. I mean, every year he was with the Rams, pretty much they were contending for, a top spot in the NFC, maybe going to the Super Bowl. Now they didn't. But he also had great success at USC as a head coach in two different stints, finished up his coaching career at UNLV, and then was actually a part as a consultant, finished up his head coaching career at UNLV from 99 to 2004. I remember I was like, man, like maybe I can get a letter from John Robinson, yeah, good luck, Pete. They got Willie McGinnis playing there. Like he was playing for John Robinson when I was in high school, not anybody like me, but he was just an amazing coach. And he was one of those kinds of coaches, you knew that they were going to have a great defense with a lot of athletes wherever he was, and that they were going to run the football. He took over, Marcus Allen, right? Like Charles White. He's got two Heisman winners from USC. And then, of course, you look at Eric Dickerson in the NFL. He knew who he was going to be. At USC, it was student body right, left. And then, obviously, with the Rams, it was Eric Dickerson, right? Eric Dickerson left. And then his final, I guess his last hurrah, you will call it, was successful. He died in Baton Rouge, and towards the end of his life, he was a coaching consultant for Coach Ed Orgeron, and hey, our guy here in Waco, right, Dave Aranda. I'm sure there probably weren't any scintillating conversations between the two of them, but maybe, and certainly in the same orbit there. And my parting note about John Robinson was my favorite thing to learn reading about him. Was that he will be celebrated, his life will be celebrated after the college football season is completely wrapped up, according to his wishes. That's what he wanted. And one of the things that's an interesting footnote is that he was really close with John Madden. They went to the same high school. They really came up together. When Madden had retired from the NFL and had then become, a head coach very early in his career and life in Oakland for the Raiders, John Robinson joined him for a year. John Robinson's first year as a coach out of college, he coached for John McKay at USC on an undefeated team that went on to win a championship. He was an offensive coordinator, and then he left John McKay and USC, went to coach with John Madden, and then came back. But just really getting Gerry Faust, it's an interesting, right? The connection between the two of these guys, or the difference between the two of these guys. John Robinson was just always like elite, kind of like always in the Rolls Royces of coaches. And obviously he earned his way there, but had some connections coming up, and was a terrific coach, throughout. Gerry Faust was interesting, right? Like a guy who was basically like a startup, a gritty guy who used charisma and charm and dedication to kind of get to the top. And when he got to the top, it was too much for him. But that's also a story around a lot of things in life, right? Like, well, like you have to, a lot of times you have to build up to the moment. Even if you've coached tremendously in high school for 18 years, like that Notre Dame job, especially back then, that was, I can't even imagine the pressure and all the eyeballs on him. He said he was ready. He said he was grateful. And it certainly impacted a lot of young men. And so that's a legacy that lasts forever, but on the field, not so hot. But yeah, those two coaches passing away, being like an old school football guy, I've been thinking about them this morning a lot and just how they were both 89 and both historic football coaches. And I'm sure neither of them would ever give a shit that I would mention them on this show, but I felt like it was something I wanted to do. So the Pete Sousa Show will welcome Cam Stewart following this short break. Cam Stewart of Locked On Baylor and the Rogue Media Network. He calls high school football games. He turns high school football games down. He'll be on ESPN Central Texas later today. He's had car trouble. He doesn't have car trouble. He has famous comedians on his show. He is next.
It's the Pete Sousa Show.